Okay, so the World Health Organization is right now trying to create a pandemic treaty, except that they've degraded this from a treaty because they know that countries like the United States, a treaty would have to be ratified by our Congress. It's not something that the chief executive can do unilaterally or that the executive branch can do unilaterally. But the World Health Organization is trying to centralize the world's response to pandemics. They're trying to be the ones that control what policies the government implements in response to a pandemic. So, I mean, we're talking lockdowns, we're talking masks, we're talking vaccines, we're talking money, we're talking everything that happened to us or that was imposed on us by our government. And sometimes it was state governments here in the United States. If you're in a blue state, it was worse than if you were in a red state. Obviously, if you lived in California or New York, it was a lot different than if you lived in Florida or in Texas. But the World Health Organization wants to have power over what countries do so that there can't be a situation where if you live in the United States and you live in Florida, then you don't have to wear masks. But if you live in New York, you're not even allowed to send your kindergartner to school without wearing a mask. The World Health Organization wants to be able to be the one that not only declares unilaterally when a pandemic is a pandemic. They don't want other governing bodies or other governments to be part of that. They want to be the ones that declare when a pandemic is a pandemic, and they want that declaration to give them emergency powers. They want to be able to say, okay, it's a pandemic, and when there's a pandemic, it's a global public health emergency, and therefore every country is compelled by their participation in this pact. They're calling it a pact, not a treaty, to enact certain measures, whether that's a lockdown, whether that's masking, whether it's something even as serious and violating as vaccine mandates, vaccine passports. The World Health Organization wants to take this next step. And it seems to me that they're going to need more fear in order to convince people to give away their liberty, in order to convince even government officials to try to give away sovereignty, our nation's sovereignty, to these super governmental organizations. There's meaning they're not part of our Constitution. They're not part of our government. We don't have to. We have no obligation to obey the World Health Organization. We don't have any kind of social contract with the World Health Organization the way that we do with our own United States government, because our United States government was set forth in our Constitution. The World Health Organization is just part of the United Nations. We can be a part of that organization, but they never have a right to usurp our sovereignty. Never. In fact, the George Bush administration at one point tried to give away U.S. sovereignty. They tried to allow the UN to boss us around when it came to international law. And this was relating to our criminal justice system. And our death penalty, to be specific. And the UN tried to tell Bush, hey, listen, don't handle these cases of foreign nationals who committed murder in your country. Don't handle these cases according to your law. Handle them according to what we think you should do, what our rules and regulations say. And Bush actually tried to defer to the United Nations. He tried to say, oh, okay, we'll go ahead and follow UN rules. And he was sued. The Bush administration was sued. Actually by Senator Ted Cruz, interestingly enough. And Senator Ted Cruz won that case. He won that case at the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court ruled that the Bush administration, even though he's the president, even though he's the chief executive, he doesn't have the authority to give away U.S. sovereignty to the United Nations. He doesn't have the authority to give that power to something that's not part of our government, not part of our social contract that citizens have with our government, because our government was laid out in the Constitution. And so the World Health Organization wants this pandemic pact, they're calling it. They want this power grab. They want these authorities, if you will, given to them by people who would take part in this pandemic pact. Leftist politicians in our country, of course, want this to happen. They're completely on board with this, but they do need more fear. They need people to be blinded by paranoia, or else people are going to say, no, I don't want the World Health Organization to be able to mandate that I have some vaccine, or tell my kid that they have to wear a mask when they go to kindergarten, or lock down my business, or prevent me from going to church. That should be something that's part of our self-governance. That's what our communities are for. It's not even our federal government's role. It should be states and localities that decide how to handle public health crises, certainly not the UN and the World Health Organization.